What's going on, everyone? Thank you for your time, for your attention. How are you holding up during this craziness? And I want you to think about what the first idea that popped into your mind when I said craziness. Because I've had conversations with people that I've brought up this idea of, what do you think? I've asked them that question. What do you think about this craziness? And I've heard responses that were completely different than mine. An example to give you, I was talking to someone and I asked them, what do you think about this craziness? And I meant about COVID-19, and they had brought up about what they thought about police brutality. So with that example, there's context matters, right? And it was fortunately, I didn't get in the way of inserting my own lens on craziness by saying, no, I meant COVID. I just allowed them to give me their point of view on the current situation with the police in the African American community, and I walked away with a very unique angle. But that does highlight, how we are seeing things is different from the way other people are seeing things. So when you hear that question, what do you think of the craziness? Think about what first pops in your mind. I feel like that's very telling. And this podcast is about the mind, and it's about the mind being full of all kind of things. We're living in an era where to control people is leveraged by giving them a water hose of information, whereas historically in the past, controlling people involves withholding information from them. We're in a time where we're inundated by information, and our minds are full of stimulus. And I talked about in episode 83 of the podcast about mindfulness meditation. If you go to that podcast, there you will find some free and paid resources that I've come across in my 5 years as a meditator that has helped me with my practice. So go check out that podcast episode if you haven't already. But there's some things I want to revisit and some things I would like to build off of in that vein. And the first thing I do want to touch on is this idea of doing meditation or mindfulness wrong. When I first started and having conversations with people that are thinking about getting started, they tell me that they have to be in a certain place to meditate, that they have to have a calmer mind to meditate. But that is what meditation does for us. It does allows us to calm ourselves down, and that's physiological. If you look at your blood pressure and your heart rate, it actually decreases when you meditate. I think the shortest amount of time to get impact is about 6 minutes of just paying attention to your breath coming in and going out has physiological effects on the body. And this idea of doing it wrong, of sitting down and paying attention to your breath. And that's what meditation is paying attention to your breath. And when you get distracted, bringing yourself back to the breath, or in other forms of meditation, bringing your attention back to a single point of focus repeatedly. And I talked about this in episode 83. Dan Harris, author of 10% Happier, and a newscaster. I don't know if that's his proper title, but Dan Harris, also 10% Happier meditation app, talks about how he's come across people saying that they feel like they're doing meditation wrong because they get distracted Well, that is the point of meditation, is that when you become distracted, you catch yourself. And once you catch yourself being distracted, you acknowledge it and you bring yourself back to the present moment and to whatever your singularity of focus is placed on. So the distraction part of the equation is just as much as part of meditation as the lowering of your heart rate is. Dan Harris likens catching yourself when you're distracted and bringing yourself back to your breath is like doing a bicep curl in the gym, right? So you when you feel that tension, acknowledge the tension, be with it, be present, and that actually rewires your brain to enable yourself to have a much wider capacity over and over again. Once you do this for hours upon hours for years, your brain rewires itself to be able to notice when you're distracted and bring yourself back to the present moment, just like building muscle in the gym. And over time, when you train your synapses in the brain to recognize when you're being distracted, what you're doing is you're creating space between the input that is coming in. I mean, we're inundated not only by information from social media, but just information of the world, of just having this input come into our awareness, and that our brain has to digest and dissect it and to place it accordingly. It's very easy to get caught up and distracted in that input and creating synapses in your brain in a way that recognizes when your attention is being diverted. That creates space between the input of the information and then whatever the output is as your response to what information the world is ingesting into you, if you will. And that space, that catching yourself, has helped me in practical ways, mainly when having conversations with people. When I was younger, I believed that honesty above anything, being honest, even if it was hurtful or brutally honest, was better than not being honest at all. And I've realized that there's certain people that can hear things a certain way, and it becomes counterproductive if you're being blatantly honest rather than being tactful in the way that you're delivering your opinion and trying to help the person with pure intentions to give them feedback in a way that builds rather than tears down. And for me, meditation has given me that space to say, okay, this is what I want to say, but this is how I should say it. And to me, that has helped me out tremendously in my personal life and my professional life. And I can attest my mindfulness practice of allowing me to have enough space in between, the initial thought and the output of communication. And that space also allows us to be here and now, instead of being caught up in the past and having regret, and being depressed over what happened, or looking ahead in the future and being nervous and having anxiety of what may or may not happen. And I believe I talked about this in number 83, but this is the result of humans and our superpower ability to imagine. We have the ability to run simulations of different situations, so that way we can see how things might play out without having to take the physical risk to learn how they will play out. And as a result of that imagination, we're forecasting, we're trying to find what the path is ahead. And we also take information from the past to help build our mental models of the future. And because of this, we find ourselves playing between what happened in the past and what happened in the future. And playing in between those two places, they can be useful if you use them as a tool. But if you find yourself getting caught in those simulations, it takes you out of the only thing that exists, which is this present moment in time. And when you find yourself too far in the future, or too lagging behind in the mental past, it takes away from your capacity to do what you can do with what you have right here, right now. And practicing mindfulness allows you to use the imagination and to use time as a tool rather than to get caught up in the stories of what happened before or what may happen next. And this concept of time is covered very coherently by Eckhart Tolle in his book The Power of Now, which I highly recommend. And there's a quote in that book that stands out to me where he says that you can always cope with the present moment, but you cannot cope with something that is only a mind projection. You cannot cope with the future. And that's, I would add, obviously, projecting out ahead is the future, but also having those mental projections or those mental movie clips of what happened before are also things that you cannot cope with. You can only be with. And to me, meditation is not about removing emotions or removing distractions, but rather relating to emotions, relating to sensation, relating to how your mind is dealing with whatever it's dealing with. And being able to create that space allows you to relate with them in a more objective manner. I learned that from a great book called Mindfulness by Mark Williams and Danny Penman, where one of the quotes in that book says that you can't stop the triggering of unhappy memories, self-critical thinking, and judgmental ways of thinking, but you can stop what happens next. You can stop the spiral from feeding off of itself and triggering the next cycle of negative thoughts. You can stop the cascade of destructive emotions that can end up making you unhappy, anxious, stressed, irritable, or exhausted. End quote. So that's the essence of meditation. It's not getting rid of anything, but relating to it in a way that is the most skillful and the most helpful. And you do that by repetitions of catching yourself in the past, catching yourself in the future, catching yourself in a certain emotional state, and being able to identify it, acknowledge it, and relate to it in a way that is most productive. And to bring things home, this idea of the present moment is a timeless and universal principle. You think about when Jesus in the Bible says to not have any worries for tomorrow. And some people mistake that as to just live for the moment. I don't think that that's what that passage is targeted towards. I think it's more so of, tomorrow is going to be here, rather whether if you're overthinking it or not. So might as well just take care of what you can right here, right now. And tomorrow, we'll take care of that when it gets here. Of course, Buddhism, this is the idea that life itself is suffering and suffering is the result of desire. and desire is the result of ignorance, and ignorance is the result of being thinking too far ahead or in the past and not being in the present moment. And then the Stoics believe, they believe in fate. They believe in whatever happens, whatever has happened for a reason, and whatever will happen is supposed to happen. And it makes me think of the former Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius in his book Meditation, this quote that says, "Forget everything else. Keep hold of this alone and remember it. Each of us lives only now, this brief instant. The rest has been lived already or is impossible to see." End quote. So with that, stick close to the present moment, understanding that this is all we have, but leveraging your superpower to imagine, what may happen, and building off of your past experience in a way that's both useful and mindful. And with that, I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your time. I hope you're staying healthy and sane. And until next time, have a great week.